People often think that the spiritual path is all about being good, peaceful, and surrounded by light and love. They imagine it's all about positive things, like love, flowers, and happy feelings. And while those things are a part of it, the spiritual path is actually one of the most real and challenging journeys there is. It's about dealing with the things inside you that hold you back. These are blockages, things deep inside that stop your energy, whether it's called Shakti, Chi, or spiritual energy, from rising to its higher state. To reach those higher spiritual levels, this energy has to move through these blockages. That's how it works. Think of it like a river flowing smoothly until it hits rocks. When the water hits obstacles, it becomes turbulent, with splashes and swirling currents. This is how nature behaves, and it's the same within us. The energy inside us wants to flow upward and elevate our consciousness to the highest states, what some yogis call transcendental states. But it can't do that freely because of these internal blocks. And these blocks aren't there because you're a bad person or because you've sinned. They're just there, and as long as they are, they influence your life. You don't control your life as much as you think. These blockages do. The desires you have, the people you are drawn to, and the moments you feel inspired or in love, all of these are influenced by how much spiritual energy gets through these blocks. For example, if you desire to be wealthy, that desire is a blockage. You might be more likely to fall in love with a wealthy person than with someone who isn't, not because of who they are, but because of your own inner blocks. There's nothing right or wrong about this. It's simply how your blockages shape your experiences. When the spiritual energy gets through these blocks, you feel more alive, more inspired, and more loving. But if something touches a blockage in a negative way, that feeling can disappear instantly. Imagine being in a deep, loving embrace, feeling completely in love. Now, if you notice something that triggers one of your blockages, like your partner looking at their phone, it can feel like all that love vanishes in a second. This shows how much these blockages control our feelings and reactions. So now let's look what is happening inside you. You don't actually decide who you love or what you like or don't like. Your blockages decide these things for you. These blockages affect how the energy, like Chi or Shakti, moves inside you. When this energy flows through your blockages, it can create feelings of love, inspiration, or happiness. But the blockages are still there, and even a small change can make those feelings disappear. For example, you might be telling someone, "I love you so much," and they respond with, "Yeah, I love you." Suddenly it doesn't feel right to you, and you stop feeling that love instantly. Why? Because your blockages decide how the energy flows. I'm showing you how it works. You don't control these feelings, it's the blockages that do. The spiritual energy inside you, called Shakti, is always trying to rise up, even during your darkest moments. But it can't do this freely because the blockages are like closed doors, stopping the energy from flowing. Now, when it comes to you don't like something, it's because you're closed off. You don't consciously choose to close yourself. It just happens. Think about looking at a piece of art that doesn't appeal to you. Someone else might be enjoying it, feeling blissful, while you're closed off. The same thing happens with music, the way people dress, hairstyles, or even colours. Certain colours can make you feel open, while others can make you feel closed. This is all because of your internal blockages. Everything you experience is the result of this energy trying to move inside you. When the energy finds openings, you feel good, open, inspired, or happy. But if the energy hits a blockage, you feel closed off or even depressed. Now, no one is actually depressed. This might sound odd to a therapist because they work with people who come to them saying they are depressed. But what I mean is that nobody's true self, the consciousness inside, is ever truly depressed. What people experience as depression is just the consciousness observing a depressed mind. You are the awareness behind your thoughts and feelings. When you feel inspired or uplifted, you know it because you're there, aware of it. If someone asks you, how do you know your heart hurts? You just know because you are in there, aware of what's happening. The same goes for when your heart feels love and openness. It's the same you who notices both feelings. That's the key to understanding spirituality. You are the one who notices what's happening inside, not the things you're noticing. Think this way. Have you ever felt your heart hurting? How do you know? Because you are there, inside yourself, aware of the feeling. And when your heart is full of love, it's the same you who notices that too. You are always the observer, no matter what's happening. So when you say you're depressed, understand that your true self isn't depressed. Your consciousness doesn't get depressed. Imagine a light shining on something broken. It doesn't become broken itself. If that same light shines on something beautiful, it doesn't become beautiful either. It's just light. That's what consciousness is like. It's the light that shines on whatever you're experiencing. If it shines on something dark or sad, it feels dark or sad. If it shines on something uplifting or beautiful, it feels uplifting and beautiful. But the light itself doesn't change. It's just aware. That's why they call it the light of consciousness. It's always there, observing, unaffected by what it sees. The problem is that people say, I am depressed or I am in love, as if they are those feelings. But that's not really true. It's more accurate to say, I am noticing love or I am noticing depression. This is what we call witness consciousness. It means you are the one who sits back and watches what's happening inside of you. You notice that you are noticing. Sometimes what you notice is darkness, times when you feel down. Other times you notice light, moments of happiness or love. These shifts in your feelings aren't something you choose. They happen because of the blockages inside you and how different people, experiences, and even your thoughts affect those blockages. You can be closed off emotionally, have a thought, and suddenly feel open. Or you could be feeling open and then have a thought that makes you feel closed. This can all happen without any change in the outside world. These blockages move around based on what's happening around you and within you. That's the basic idea. There are blockages inside. And while part of the spiritual journey might involve finding things that make you feel open and engaging with them, that's not the whole story. That's not the real path. The true spiritual path is about removing those blockages. It's so important to understand that you can get rid of them, all of them. It moves me to tears because it's possible for everyone. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. It doesn't matter what kind of blockages you have or how they got there. Every single one of them can be removed. So what happens when these blockages are gone? This is where it gets exciting. When the blockages are no longer there, you begin to feel inspired by everything around you. You start to love everything because that's the natural state of the energy inside you, what we call Shakti. The nature of this energy is love, joy, inspiration, and ecstasy. When there are no blockages, this energy flows freely. It rises up all by itself. No need for meditation or special practices. If nothing is blocking it, the Shakti energy moves upward, clearing everything in its path and bringing you closer to God or the divine. Remember, consciousness itself doesn't get depressed, but it can observe a depressed mind, and when it does, you feel that way. So now we have the foundation for understanding what the spiritual path really is. But it's not always straightforward. Now, in The Long and Winding Road by the Beatles, it surprised me because that song captures this idea perfectly, a long and winding road. That's what the spiritual path is like. It's not a straight line because you need to work through your stuff, your blockages and the things holding you back. The journey involves understanding what these blockages are, how to work through them, and much more. This is the real spiritual path. When people say, the spiritual path is about going to God, what does that even mean? It's like saying, go to your soul. These words don't convey the deeper understanding needed. God is not just an idea or a figure from a book. God is a state of consciousness. It's a state where all your energy and consciousness merge back into the source, into creation. God is the creator of the universe, and to experience God is to experience that merging of your entire being back into the creator. That's what the spiritual journey is really about. So how do you reach that state where your energy flows freely and you feel inspired and in love with everything? The answer is simple. You have to remove the blockages inside you. Now let's think about this for a moment. If you need to remove them, it's important to understand what they are and where they come from. So let's dive into that. And I have to be honest, you might not like what I'm about to say. You put them there. That's right, I didn't put them there. Nobody else did. You did. Every blockage inside you was put there by you. What does that mean? These blockages come from experiences that happened in your life, things that occurred outside of you. When these experiences came into your awareness, your consciousness wasn't able to fully process or handle them. You couldn't let them come and go freely. Instead, you held on to them. You didn't let them pass through you like you should have. Think about it. A lot of things happen around you every day that don't bother you at all. For example, when you drive, you see the white lines on the road, cars passing by, trees along the way, or blades of grass in a field. All of these things come into your awareness, but they pass right through. It's like water pouring into an ocean, no resistance, no holding on. You experience these things, and then they merge back into your state of consciousness, and that's it. But let's be honest, there are some experiences from your past that didn't just pass through you, they got stuck inside. Why did that happen? It's because you didn't let them go. You resisted. You might have thought, no, I don't want to feel this. I can't handle this. Maybe you said to yourself, this is too much for me, or I can't deal with this right now. When you say, that's not okay with me, you're resisting the experience. But let me ask you, did resisting it stop it from happening? No, it didn't. The experience still happened. If it didn't happen, it wouldn't be inside of you now. So what does this mean? You can't stop things from happening in the outside world, but you can stop yourself from fully experiencing them. You use your willpower to push these experiences away. This act of pushing away is called resistance. You might know it by other names: suppression, repression, denial. It's all the same thing. It's resistance at different levels. When you get into deeper psychological terms like repression or denial, these mean you really can't handle the experience at all. Denial is when you don't even admit that something happened. You might say, no, that didn't happen, when clearly it did. By denying it, you're pushing it away so forcefully that you don't even let it get close enough for you to acknowledge that it happened. This is just another form of resistance, isn't it? In the end, all these blockages are just experiences that you didn't let pass through you. They got stuck because you resisted them, and that's why they're still there. If you want to remove them and live a life where your energy flows freely, you have to stop resisting and start allowing these experiences to move through you. That's how you begin to clear the blockages and move forward on your spiritual path. Let's talk little about repression, suppression, and resistance. These are just different ways of using your willpower to deal with experiences. You have a power inside you, the power to control what happens to the energy that comes into you. Some people have told me they didn't fully understand this concept until I explained it like this. Imagine you have hands inside you. You use these hands to push away energies or experiences you don't want to deal with. Do you do this? Yes or no? Do you try to control what happens inside when certain feelings or energies come up? Those hands are like your willpower. You have the ability to push things away, to resist them. And when you push these experiences away, they become blockages inside you. Every single time you've pushed something away, whether it was something big or small, it created a blockage. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're back in high school and someone plays a prank on you. Everyone laughs at you. It might seem like a small thing now, but imagine it's been 20 years since that happened. You go back to your high school reunion and see the person who did that prank. Suddenly you feel all those old emotions coming back, the embarrassment, the feeling of being laughed at. you realize that you don't feel the same way about that person as you do about others. Why is that? It's because that small event never really left you. It got stuck inside. It's ridiculous, isn't it? You can drive past white lines on the road or see trees while driving, and they don't trigger any feelings. But seeing that person again does. And it's not just that one person. You probably have other feelings tied to other people from that time. Maybe your first boyfriend or girlfriend is there. And that brings up its own set of feelings, doesn't it? Or maybe someone stole your boyfriend or girlfriend, and those feelings rush back too. Or maybe there was a teacher who didn't like you, and even after 20 years you still don't like them. It's crazy when you think about it. These people have probably changed over the years, but to you they're still stuck in that old image you have of them. Why? Because that's how you stored them in your mind. These are your blockages. In yoga, we call them samskaras. When energy comes into you through experiences or emotions, it has to go somewhere. Energy is always moving. It's a force that flows like waves. But if you resist it, if you block it, where does it go? It can't just disappear, so it starts circling around itself. When you use your willpower to resist an experience, that energy starts to cycle around the force of your will. It keeps moving, but stays in one place. It's like one of those puzzles where something is always moving, but never really goes anywhere. That's what a circle does. It keeps the energy moving in one spot. This is why the concept of a circle is so important in understanding how energy works. It shows how energy can be both active and stuck at the same time. It's always moving, but because it's trapped in a cycle, it doesn't go anywhere new. This is how your unresolved experiences and emotions stay within you, becoming blockages that affect how you feel and react, even years later. To truly be free, you have to find a way to let these blockages go. Now let's talk little about what happens with that circle of energy that gets blocked inside you. This blocked energy has all kinds of things tied to it, your emotions, your thoughts, even your senses like smell. Have you ever walked into a kitchen, smelled something cooking, and suddenly felt a rush of emotions, maybe even started crying? That's because the smell triggered a memory that was stored in your blockages. This is what a lot of psychology is all about. This is also what your life is all about, dealing with these blockages you've stored inside. As life goes on, new experiences hit those old blockages, and they start to shift around. Does anyone experience mood swings? That's what moods are about. They happen because energy is trying to move through these blockages, and any little thing can shift them, a smell, a thought, a look from someone. Someone could give you a certain look, and suddenly you're in a bad mood or a good mood. Why? Because it triggered one of those blockages. Everything you experience is tied to these blockages moving around and the energy trying to flow through them. When the energy manages to flow freely, you feel good, uplifted and inspired. But when it gets blocked and things get dark or heavy, you don't like it. In this way, you're like a little puppet, or like those lab mice in a cage that get jolted by an electric pulse, reacting and moving based on what you're feeling. It's like you're being controlled by these blockages, right? Even society tells you to do this. You have life coaches, motivational speakers, and other experts who say things like, find what inspires you and go after it. That's great advice, and I'm not saying you shouldn't follow it, but that's not the ultimate goal. Yes, go ahead and follow what inspires you, but I want you to reach a place where everything inspires you. That's what happens when you have no blockages. Imagine being so free that even doing the dishes or taking out the trash feels exciting and joyful. Picture this. You see your ex-husband, and instead of feeling bitterness or resentment, you think, wow, I always loved him so much and I still do. Imagine living like that, with no blockages. Without blockages, your life becomes filled with love and excitement for everything. But right now, your life is shaped by your blockages. Where they open up, you move towards those things, and where they close, you avoid them. That's why you have people you like and people you don't like, music you love and music you dislike, art that moves you and art that does nothing for you. All your preferences, your likes and dislikes, they're all governed by these blockages. You didn't actually choose them. Your blockages did. Yes, I thought I liked this color, but then I saw a slightly different shade of it, and I realized I really liked that one more. Exactly. That new shade opened you up for some reason. Maybe it reminds you of a blanket or a toy you had as a kid. You can see how this works, right? Now think about the negative side. For example, most people love sunsets. They find them beautiful and relaxing. But imagine someone who hates sunsets. Why? Because their college girlfriend wanted to break up with them and chose to do it during a sunset. They were sitting in a convertible, the sun was setting, and she said, "See that sunset? I'm heading toward it. Goodbye." After that, sunsets are no longer beautiful to them. They're a reminder of that painful moment. They might never enjoy another sunset again. It's kind of funny, but it's also very true. This is exactly what a samskara is. It's what a blockage is. Events happen in life and we process them in different ways. Some experiences pass through us without any issue, some we push down and try to forget, and others we cling to because we like them and want them to happen again. It's all just energy moving around inside us. That's what yoga teaches. It's the dance of energy interacting with your blockages. So if that's what blockages are, the spiritual path is about getting rid of them. First, you have to stop creating new blockages. Second, you work on clearing the ones that are already there. That's the entire spiritual path in a nutshell. Does meditation help with this? Yes, it absolutely does. Does chanting mantras help? Of course. These practices give you the tools to manage and release the blockages that are stuck inside you. Now, why is the spiritual path often described as a long and winding road? Why don't I just say, here's the end goal, now go and do it? Because if you've been paying attention, you'll realize how powerful these inner energies can be. They're way more powerful than most people realize. You might think you have control over your emotions and reactions, but then something small happens, and suddenly you're a completely different person. Your mood changes, your desires change, and everything about what you want in life can shift in an instant. I've seen people go through this. They have these shifts, and sometimes they make decisions during those times that don't align with who they were before. Afterward, they might not even want to go back to their old selves because the choices they made during those intense moments don't fit with their previous life or identity. And I've met people who, after many years, you can see it in their eyes. They want to return to who they were before, but they feel like they can't. The life they created during those shifts is no longer a match for the person they were. The environment they've built around them won't let them go back to that old version of themselves. Now you know that there are so many parts of us inside, and sometimes life doesn't line up with all those parts, does it? Different things happen in life that stir things up. It could be thoughts, dreams, or even something bigger like God. I don't really know how to explain it, but events outside of us happen, and suddenly something inside shifts. What used to be hidden or buried suddenly becomes a main part of you, and that can be tough to handle, right? Has anyone here had something like that happen to them? I want you to understand how it feels to live with all these parts of you. It's not wrong and it's not your fault. It's because blockages create different parts inside us. If there weren't blockages, you'd feel like a whole, integrated person. Everything would flow and your energy would be free. I know this is hard to explain, but I'm glad you're listening. So what happens when you let go of a blockage? You don't even realize it, but you're using your willpower to push that stuff down inside you. Your will, your consciousness, is up here, but you're holding that energy down. And you don't realize how much energy it takes to keep all that stuff buried. You think you're low on energy, but really you're just using it all to keep that stuff down. You're using energy for 3 things. 1, to hold it all together and protect it from being hurt again. 2, you're busy trying to get what you want and avoid what you don't want. And 3, the moment you're able to let that blockage go, something amazing happens. That energy comes up and feeds you. It transforms into a different kind of energy, and you feel it. You, The real you inside, the seat of your consciousness, becomes stronger. When the energy is freed, it becomes you. It's all connected to something greater, and suddenly a big shift happens. Your inner power grows because you're no longer wasting energy fighting yourself, and that free energy becomes part of you again. That's why, in classic Freudian psychology, you might lie down on the couch and talk about your mum, your past, or other things like that. After going through session after session, maybe around the 24th session, something big happens, a breakthrough. Suddenly you can't sleep because you're so full of energy. You feel like a different person. That's because you've cleared out one of the blockages inside you. I'm going to be real with you here. These blockages are deep down and you're constantly fighting them. You spend so much of your energy trying to keep them under control. Even without realizing it, you're doing everything you can to avoid anything that might trigger those blockages. You want things to go your way, and you don't want things to happen that you can't handle. Just think about how much time and effort you put into making sure life is the way you want it, and how much you avoid things you don't want. That's how these blockages are running your life. They control your thoughts and emotions. They decide when you feel open and when you shut down. It's like being a puppet with those blockages pulling your strings. It sounds simple to say, let's just get rid of those blockages, but I'm telling you, it's not that easy. Think about it. If you had a small argument with someone yesterday and then you see them today, you might go out of your way to avoid them. I don't want to deal with them right now. Have you ever done that? If you're not at peace with yourself, even the tiniest things can make you uncomfortable. Now imagine that discomfort but multiplied by a big trauma or painful experience from your past, like a rough childhood, your parents divorcing, or something else deep-rooted. Can you see how that would affect you? That's the stuff buried inside you. The path forward is to clean it out. First, stop adding more blockages, and second, work on clearing the ones already there. So how do you clear them? It sounds simple when you talk about it. You have to deal with the things you couldn't handle when they happened. Let me say that again. Learn to handle those things so you're not constantly saying, I can't deal with this. Because if you could have dealt with it back then, it wouldn't still be there, stuck inside you. The key is your ability to handle it. Not only could you not handle it when it first happened, but even now, when it comes back up, you still can't handle it. So you push it back down again. And what do you do when someone brings it up? You get uncomfortable, right? You probably say something like, don't talk about that. You don't want people to trigger those old feelings because you can't deal with them. At the same time, you chase after things that make you feel good. You want to recreate a moment that made you happy, but it never works out exactly the same way. Why? Because the first time it made you happy, it was unexpected. It was a surprise. That's why you can't make it happen again the same way. It's about letting go of that constant need to recreate the past and learning to handle what's inside you so those blockages don't run your life anymore. Give your kid a toy and watch how happy they are. But try giving them the same toy a year later, and the excitement just isn't the same, is it? That first-time thrill is gone. You can't ever get back to that neutral, fresh experience. This is a perfect example of what it's like to live with your inner mind. The key here is to figure out how to deal with things, especially those things you couldn't handle before. When those old feelings come back up, they need to pass through you, transform into light, and merge into your consciousness into something greater. This process is how those old emotions change and turn into something positive like energy or light. That's what's supposed to happen. But most of us don't let that happen easily. It's simple to talk about it, but actually doing it is tough. Some stuff you can work through, but other things feel too hard to let go of. But let me be clear, there's nothing inside you that has to stay locked in. There's no superglue keeping those blockages stuck in place. When doctors do MRI scans and look at your thought patterns, what they're seeing is just the result of your blockages. Yes, it shows up in your brain, but that's because of the emotional and mental baggage you've been carrying. Here's a way to think about it. If I smoke for years, I could end up with lung cancer. That cancer shows up on medical scans, but the root cause was the smoking. In the same way, the blockages show up in your thought patterns, but they're not who you are. Not all problems are physical. Some are psychological. In those cases, the issue is about where your energy is going. Blockages divert energy in the wrong directions, but that's not who you really are. You're not your personality, your body, your likes or dislikes. You're the consciousness that's aware of all these things. The more you stop getting caught up in your blockages, the more your awareness naturally rises to where you can feel your true self, the seat of your consciousness. That's what spirituality is about. Think of it like a video game. In a game, there are different levels, level 1, level 2, and so on, and there are obstacles or monsters trying to stop you. But you keep working your way up, right? Well, the same thing is happening inside of you. It's like God is playing a giant video game in your soul asking, "Can I find my way back home?" You go through different stages, facing different challenges as you try to elevate your awareness. It's not easy. That's the simple truth. When those blockages first happened, you couldn't handle them, and even now, when they come back up, they're still tough to deal with. If something negative happens that you've never faced before, it can knock you down hard. Suddenly, you're feeling depressed, confused and lost, not knowing which way is up, and we've all been there. But the path forward is learning to face those feelings when they come up and handle them so they don't keep dragging you down. The more you do that, the more you'll rise above the blockages and live from a higher state of consciousness. That's the journey you're on. Sometimes something happens, and suddenly you're in love, filled with energy, and you feel like you need to act on it because it's so strong. That feeling isn't wrong at all. In fact, it's right. It's part of your path. It's showing you where you need to focus your work. We can talk about this all day, but in the end, you're going to have to face these energies yourself. What I hope for you is that you learn to enjoy dealing with them, that you appreciate the process. It's a long, winding road you're on, and you'll have to go through many ups and downs. I've always told you, when the energy comes up, breathe through it, let it rise and work with it. That's why you practice things like yoga, to move that energy and bring it up. But sometimes, no matter what you do, the energy feels negative or positive, and it doesn't seem to work out the way you want. That's just how it is sometimes. You can try all you want, but at some point you might find yourself turning to things like drinking, doing drugs, or running away from the feelings because they feel too negative. Or you might be chasing after something because it feels positive. Either way, it's just part of life. So what does it mean when I say you go through it? It means life will keep shifting and you'll have to experience whatever comes up. It doesn't always work out perfectly like you expect. It never does, really. For example, you might get divorced, thinking it will solve things. But because of your blockages, you'll end up attracting someone very similar to your ex. You'll realize that just because you made changes doesn't mean everything will be different overnight. And here's something else to think. You might think something is your number one priority in life right now, but then something else comes along, and that becomes the new priority. And the more you satisfy that need, the less you'll want it. It's a cycle. So as you go through life, understand that the energy inside you, whether it feels good or bad, is part of your journey. You'll have to learn to work with it, to breathe through it and let it move. Life won't always be smooth or turn out how you expect, but it's all part of the process of growth. Imagine there's a place you love going on vacation. Go there 3 times and by the 4th time you might not be as excited about it. That's the law of diminishing returns. The more you get something, the less you want it. You've got to understand how this works. But that doesn't mean you don't need to go through it. It's one thing to understand something in your head, but it's a whole different thing to deal with those strong feelings, whether they're positive or negative, when they take over, pulling you in a certain direction. So, what do you do when those feelings come up? You go through it. How long does it take? Well, nobody knows for sure. Meher Baba said it might take 100, 200 lifetimes to work through everything, maybe even thousands. But don't worry, you've got plenty of time. This is why reincarnation is taught. The idea that the soul goes through many lifetimes, working through everything until it's ready to merge back with something greater. When Christ said, "You must die to be reborn," he was talking about dying to your personal self, the part of you that's full of blockages and attachments. Once you do that, you're reborn into your true spirit, your natural state. But it's not easy, and it shouldn't be. You shouldn't feel guilty about struggling either. I always tell people all you can do on this path is the best you can. That's it. Just do your best. And what does that mean? It means working with the energies inside you. If those energies pull you one way or another, you go through it. If you can transform or transmute those feelings, great. But always do your best, and never feel guilt or shame about the struggle. The only time guilt should come in is when you knowingly don't do your best. If you knew you shouldn't do something but did it anyway, then guilt is useful because it'll teach you not to do it again. In that case, guilt serves a purpose. It's a lesson. But if you truly did your best, you don't need guilt. Guilt is for those who intentionally don't try their best. When you don't do your best, you end up with unresolved feelings inside. But if you're giving it your all, the results of your effort will teach you what you need to know. Think about studying for a math test. You do the best you can. Whatever you get wrong, the teacher will point out, and you'll learn from it, becoming better. That's how growth works. I always tell people, if you get a perfect score on a test, you didn't really learn anything. But if you score an 80, you've got room to grow, and that's where learning happens. Life works the same way. You go through experiences, do your best, and the things you didn't quite master will teach you something. That's how you improve. Not by getting everything perfect, but by learning from the journey. You don't have all the answers. You don't know how to handle everything at first, but you learn. Life pulls you through different situations. Things happen, and you can't always predict what's coming. You might think, this is what I want more than anything. And then life takes a turn. Maybe someone dies, or a hurricane hits. Life keeps happening while you're busy making plans, and each moment teaches you something. Just like a woman who talked about her divorce. She went through a tough time, but in the end she found freedom. She broke free from the walls that had kept her stuck. You see, you just keep doing the best you can, no matter what comes your way. And in all of this, there's no room for guilt or shame. You just stay focused on doing your best. A wise teacher once said, "Keep your mind focused at the point between your eyebrows, your third eye, and never let it wander." This is the highest spiritual practice, higher than even advanced techniques like Kriya Yoga. Try it, and you'll see. One day, the energy inside you will naturally rise to the third eye, the sixth chakra, known as the Agna chakra. When you've evolved enough, this flow of energy becomes constant. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's day or night, working or resting, that energy keeps moving upward. But life will try to pull that energy down. You'll feel it. When other energies or emotions arise, they tug at you, pulling you away from your focus. You can literally feel that tension. That's how you learn, not by reading a bunch of books, but by reading yourself. You observe how things affect your energy, and when you finally let go of what's pulling you down, the energy rises again. It's pure ecstasy, and you directly experience the dance of Shakti, the movement of energy within you. This is what the spiritual path is really about. It's not just some idea of white light and instant peace. You have to work your way through your internal struggles and challenges. Now let's talk a little bit about drugs. Some folks use drugs and have powerful experiences. But here's the thing, they always come back down. How do I know? Because when they tell you about their experience, they say, "It was amazing, I had this experience." And then you ask, "When?" They reply, "Oh, 4 years ago." So I don't tell people what they should or shouldn't do, but know this. Those experiences can show you the potential of what's possible. But they don't keep you in that state. The real work, the real path, is about going through your experiences, learning from them, and allowing the energy to rise naturally. That's where true spiritual growth happens. So here's the thing. You walk your own path in life, and that's fine. But no matter what, you're going to have to face the things inside you that are coming up. It's that simple. You can't run away from it with alcohol, LSD, or even relationships. You can't avoid it with anything like that. Do you get that? It's coming up because it's already in you. That's why relationships, for example, often bring up issues. Things happen in a relationship and suddenly all these old feelings and unresolved issues come up. But here's the thing. You'll realize over time that it won't stay like that unless you use those moments to let go of what's been buried inside. Now, relationships can be really beautiful when they come from a place of selfless love. If you love someone more than you love yourself, if you care about them more than avoiding your own pain, then that's selfless love. In that case, the relationship becomes spiritual. It becomes a way to help you grow because you're willing to let go of your own issues for the sake of the other person. That's a beautiful thing. But that's not what most people do with relationships. Instead, we base them on how the other person makes us feel. You turn me on, I want to be with you. You turn me off, I don't want to be with you. That's how most people define relationships, based on their own wants and needs. And then, as life goes on, things change. Feelings shift. Here's the key idea I'm getting at. What is desire? It's simply something you think will make you feel better. It's not a dictionary definition, but it's a clear one, right? You think, if I have that, I'll be happier or more at peace. That's why you desire it, because you believe it will make you feel better. But the truth is, if you can learn to let go of the need to feel better from outside things, you can find real freedom. So now what happens when you actually get what you want? Sure, you feel satisfied for a while, but then something else comes up. Has there ever been a time in your life where you got what you wanted and then never wanted anything else again? Exactly. Wake up. This is just how it works inside of you. All I'm saying is, learn to live with this understanding. You're going to go through your stuff. There's no avoiding it. As much as you can, keep your focus upward, keep your eye on something higher, and try to let go of the things that come up. You're not going to be perfect at it, and that's okay. No one ever is, unless they're born enlightened, maybe the Dalai Lama or Christ. But for the rest of us, we're going to have to deal with our stuff. You might wonder, how do I know I need to go through this? Well, because you do everything you can to keep your energy flowing, and yet life still brings challenges. Then, when you look back later, you'll see, oh, I guess I had to go through that. Think about it. Maybe you had a rough marriage, a tough divorce, but wow, you learned so much through that experience. It's crazy how much growth comes from those tough times. It's like life was showing you there was no other way but to go through it. Here's the key. Don't judge your past self from where you are now. You're not supposed to be the same person you were back then, so of course when you look back, it might seem messy. But there's no shame or guilt if you were doing the best you could. There's only learning and growth. That's the spiritual path. It's about going through what you need to go through, even when it's hard. There will be times when you feel really high, like everything's going great inside of you. And then, out of nowhere, something happens, and boom, fear, desire, or some other emotion takes over. But you just do your best and keep moving forward. That's the journey. Have you ever read Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse? If you have, you'll see that this is exactly what the book talks about. You go through what you need to go through, and there's no getting around it. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to do in life, but I will tell you what not to do. Don't suppress. Suppression is the worst thing you can do with your energy. When a shift is happening and you can't handle it, don't push it down and ignore it. Because if you do, it'll just come back, And not just in future lives, but throughout this life too. It'll keep showing up. You might think you can push things away and they'll stay quiet, but anything you suppress is like a hidden virus in a computer. You don't know where it's going to pop up, what it's affecting, or how it's messing with everything else inside of you. That's what psychologists figure out. Maybe something happened with your mum when you were a kid, and now 30 years later, you're acting a certain way because of it, without even realizing the connection. Suppression doesn't solve anything. It just makes it harder down the line, so don't do it. Let it come up and deal with it. Now, there are times when you get upset, angry, or overwhelmed, and you know you can't handle it in that moment. So, for a little while, you hold it down. You don't let those emotions or patterns come out and affect the people around you. But here's the thing. Don't leave it like that. You always need to come back to it, maybe later that night or as soon as you can, and work on letting it go. You don't want to leave all that stuff buried inside, adding more layers to what's already there. Now the big question is, how do you actually let it go? I hope I've convinced you by now that the reason things feel so chaotic inside is because we've been holding on to all this stuff for so long. It's like I said before, life inside can feel weird. Is it weird living in there? Yes, it's weird. But guess what? It's weird for everyone, and that's okay. So how do we deal with it? Over time, I've learned that if you can't handle the small stuff, there's no way you'll be able to handle the big stuff. It's just like anything else in life. If you can't practice basic piano scales, you won't be able to play a complex piece by Mozart. If you can't practice with a tennis ball machine, how could you ever play against someone like Serena Williams? The same goes for handling emotions and life challenges. You have to start small and build your way up. It might seem too simple, but this is exactly what I talk about all the time, because most people don't do it. And if you actually start doing it, everything changes. So what's a small thing you can practice with? The weather. Everyone complains about the weather, right? But here's the deal. If you can't handle the heat, how are you going to handle losing a loved one, a bad divorce, or a serious illness? Maybe you can't control those big things, but you can learn to handle something as simple as the weather. And if you can't even manage that, you'll struggle with the bigger stuff when it comes. So the work you do every single day of your life is learning how to handle things. It's an ongoing process, something you have to practice moment by moment. You ask yourself, can I handle this? And the answer is, yes, you can. But why bother? Because that's how you grow. That's how you learn. If you're complaining about the heat, remember, it's nothing compared to the serious things people face. There are people out there living in war zones, losing their children, going through unimaginable pain. If they can handle that, you can handle the weather. So do it. Practice with the small things and work with yourself every day. I mean, think about it. It's not just some big burning ball up there. It's a star. And who doesn't like stars? They're beautiful, twinkling in the night sky. And here we are, close enough to one to actually feel its heat. How incredible is that? And you're complaining about it. That's just ridiculous. So, when you start thinking about it like that, you become more open, more receptive to what's really going on around you. And because I've always liked astronomy, we know that the sun is 93 million miles away from us. That's a massive distance, right? For some perspective, the Earth's circumference is about 24,000 miles. So 93 million, that's mind-blowing. And get this, you could fit 1.3 million Earths inside the sun. Isn't that awesome? Now, let's think about it. Miami is about 360 miles away. Let's say, and don't do this, but if you set every single building in Miami on fire, we wouldn't feel even a degree of difference up here, right? But the sun, all the way out at 93 million miles, is still hot enough for us to feel its warmth. So next time you feel the heat, instead of getting annoyed, just say, "Hi, star." You don't get sunburned, you get starburned. It's all about changing your attitude. That's what it means to respect, honor, and learn to handle things. and you can apply that same shift in perspective to everything in life. Take the rain, for example. Instead of complaining about having to walk in it, stop for a moment and think, where do all the fresh fruits and vegetables in the grocery store come from? Rain. If it doesn't rain, we don't eat. So start seeing things in a new light. You can call it positive thinking if you want, but I prefer to call it learning how to handle life. As you practice this with small things like the weather, something bigger will eventually come along. Maybe someone doesn't say hello to you, or maybe someone talks behind your back. Whatever it is, you'll realize, I can handle this, because you've been practicing on the little things. And when you start to feel that discomfort rise up, it's okay, just let it go. The next time something bigger comes up, you'll be ready. And here's a heads up. If you're really working on yourself and making progress, don't be surprised when more difficult stuff starts showing up for no reason. Why? Because you've been pushing down so much over the years, keeping bigger issues from surfacing. Now that you're letting go, it's all coming up. And when it does, don't get upset. Don't think, I was doing so well and now suddenly it's tough again. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to go through this. And when that happens, you just keep letting go, keep growing through it. It's like that old song says, the long and winding road that leads to your door. That's the journey you're on. Don't leave yourself standing there. Keep walking that path, and eventually you'll make it home. That's why you're on this road. That's what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with what you're going through. You have to go through whatever comes your way, but the key is to try to keep your focus steady, like aiming at the spot between your eyebrows. Let everything you're feeling come up to the surface. Let it all rise up. That's what the spiritual path is all about. So where does this path lead? Think about what it means to be a master. A master is someone who has mastered something, right? We call someone a golf master or a tennis master because they've perfected their skills in those sports. But in a spiritual sense, a master is someone who has mastered handling everything life throws at them. They let everything come in, rise up, and then let it wash away. It's like cleaning out all the stuff inside of you as the energy moves through you. When you can deal with a certain level of discomfort, it's not just about handling one specific situation, like someone rejecting you. Once you learn to deal with that discomfort, you're actually learning to handle everything that comes at that level of difficulty. It's not just about that one event. It's about everything similar that might come your way. Suddenly, all these challenges don't seem so overwhelming anymore, and you think, wow, I can actually handle this. That's what spiritual growth is. It's the ability to manage what's going on inside you as best as you can, and to appreciate life because it's teaching you through every experience. A wise person looks back and wouldn't change a single thing, no matter how tough it was, because all of it made them who they are today. They embrace it all, and they wouldn't have it any other way. So, embrace everything you go through. It's all part of your journey, and it's beautiful. Keep working on these things. Thank you for listening.